All right. So I was wanting to wait for a few people to join in, and then we will start discussing some of the most recent information that was sent to me. And as always, I'm the last person to find out about some of these things. So the case today is about a lady named Laurie, and I'm probably going to pronounce some things wrong throughout this video. So it is what it is. But this woman's name is Laurie, and I've heard her last name pronounced a few different ways, but it's Laurie Bembenek, or I've heard people pronounce it Bembenek, Bembenek, or Bembenek. I think Bembenek would be easier to pronounce, so we'll go with that. Jamie, you're the only one so far. Oh no, we got a few more people that then came in. All right, so what I want to do, since I can't remember every single bit of this information, I'm going to be reading through basically something I came across that explains this from start to finish, and I'm going to be talking about it along the way. One of my friends on social media, he's from the UK, somewhere over there, he sent this to me, and a couple of days ago I started reading it. It was very interesting, and then I noticed today Rubber Ducky went on and she talked about it and really did a really good job on it. But so I don't leave anything out, I'm going to read straight from this. So this woman's name is Laurie Bembenek. Bembenek. All right. So Laurie was born August 15, 1958, November, and she died, I'm assuming this is November 20th, 2010. She was an American former police officer convicted of murdering her husband's ex-wife. Her story garnered national attention after she escaped from Tachita Correctional Institution and was recaptured in Canada, an episode which inspired books, movies, and the slogan "Run, Bambi, Run." Bambi was her nickname. Upon winning a new trial, she pleaded no contest to second-degree murder and was sent time served and 10 years probation in December 1992, 4 years after she sought to have the sentence overturned. So keep in mind that along the way, because this takes place in Milwaukee, which is very close to Manawak, actually has a lot of the same players as other cases that we talk about. And I don't know if y'all know, but these pictures that are going around of these nude parties where all these police officers are dancing nude on these picnic tables and all of this, and there's All right. Can everybody see me? This internet I got is absolutely horrible. I'm going to have to get a, all right. Forgive me for that. My internet is garbage. I'm going to have to get a amplifier to put back here on the other end of the house, but whatever. We're going to pick back up. Sorry about that. Now, there's these photos circulating, suspected Michael or Lieutenant Bushman or whatever on the picnic table holding his business. And so we're going to jump into that in a second. So look, prior to her arrest, Bembenek was fired by the Milwaukee Police Department and had gone on to sue the department. So a lot of this is going to start sounding real familiar. So she went on to sue the department, claiming that it engaged in sexual discrimination and other illegal activities. She worked briefly as a waitress at the Lake Geneva, Wisconsin Playboy Club. At the time of her arrest, she was working for Marquette University Public Safety Department in downtown Milwaukee. On November 20, 2010, she died at a hospice facility in Portland, Oregon at the age of 52. All right. She was the youngest of three girls born to Joseph and Virginia in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on August 15, 1958. Joseph had previously worked for the Milwaukee Police Department. So he was a police officer at the same department that she was. But he quit after witnessing what he described as corruption within the department. He later worked as a carpenter. So her daddy worked for the Milwaukee Police Department. She grows up and she works for the Milwaukee Police Department. He quits because he says the department is full of corruption. That, this is all reminiscent to some things that's happening nearby. Now, she was raised at a Roman Catholic and attended St. Augustine Elementary School and St. Mary's Academy in Milwaukee. She later transferred to Bayview High School, where she graduated in 1976. Upon graduation, she attended Bryant and Stratton College, where she earned an associate's degree in fashion, merchandising, management. Now, get to the interesting stuff. Career and marriage. After college, she worked in retail and had a brief stint as a model. In 1978, she appeared as Miss March in a calendar distributed by Joseph Schultz Brewing Company. I cannot, like I said earlier, I'm going to have trouble pronouncing a lot of this crap. In March 1980, she began training at the Milwaukee Police Academy. While still a trainee, anonymous tipster reported that she was seen smoking marijuana at a party. So this is where we need to start paying attention. She denied the charge, which was investigated but never substantiated. Bembenek later said she believed the accusation was made by the wife of a Milwaukee police officer who confronted her at a party about her clothing and accused her of leading her husband on. Bembenek graduated from the academy in the summer of 1980 and was assigned to the South Side 2nd District of Milwaukee. In her autobiography, Women on the Run, Bembenek claimed that the Milwaukee Police Department was then composed of brutal, lazy, apathetic, and corrupt police officers. She further claimed that female and minority officers were routinely subjected to harassment and abuse during training. So this isn't hard to believe. We're talking about the 80s. You know, women were still treated like crap in the workplace. They was harassed all the time. They was viewed as items and not equals or people. Same thing with minorities. You got a bunch of white men, and I'm not against white men. I don't want to sit up here and sound like whatever. I'm not sitting here saying that everything is the white man's fault. But what I'm saying is we all know how minorities were treated back in the day, and we all know, if you're honest with yourself, how women were treated back in the day. So she's saying that this police department had the same thing. They wanted the officers that were there, they wanted all white males. They didn't want minorities. They didn't want women. So the department is closed, corrupt police officers, blah, blah. She further claimed that female and minority officers were routinely subjected to harassment and abuse during training. She stated that when females and minority trainees became members of the police force, they were often severely punished or fired for minor infractions during their probationary period, while white male officers went unpunished for most serious offenses. So double standard, right? Minorities, women, they do one little thing, they're gone. They had a little fraternity of white men, and that's all they wanted in there. They didn't want anybody else in there. So keep all this in mind. While training at the Milwaukee Police Academy, Bembenek met and became close with another female trainee, Judy Zess. At a rock concert in May 1980, Zess was arrested for smoking marijuana. Bembenek's subsequent dismissal from the police department on August 25th stemmed from her involvement in filing a false report on Zess' arrest. After being fired, she discovered photos of Milwaukee police officers dancing nude and semi-nude at a party sponsored by a local bar. She took the photos to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, arguing that while she was fired for a minor infraction, the photos proved that the other police officers committing more serious violations were not punished. The EEOC encouraged her to file a discrimination report with the Milwaukee Police Department Internal Affairs Division. That's the wrong thing to do because they're all in cahoots with everybody else. In the months following her firing, Bembenek briefly worked as a waitress at the Playboy Club in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. So bear with me. I'm reading all this, but this is important information. Around that time, she met Alfred O. Fred Schultz, then a 13-year veteran of the Milwaukee Police Department. Schultz had 2 sons and had obtained a divorce from his first wife, Christine. In November 1980, Bembenek and Schultz were married in January 1981 in Illinois. At the time of the marriage, Bembenek was working as a personal trainer at a health club and was living in an apartment with Schultz. Her friend Judy Zess's boyfriend, Thomas D. Gartner, Bembenek later got a job as a campus security officer at Marquette University. Okay. In November 1981, Bembenek and Schultz were remarried after a judge ruled that the couple's marriage was invalid because Schultz had violated Wisconsin's law by not waiting 6 months after his divorce from Christine to remarry. Now, okay. On May 28, 1981, approximately 2:15 a.m., Fred Schultz's ex-wife, Christine, was murdered in her Milwaukee home. Christine Schultz had been killed by a single .38 caliber pistol fired point blank into her back through her heart. She had been gagged and blindfolded, and her hands were tied in front of her with a rope. Her 2 sons, then 7 and 11, okay? Her 2 sons, 7 and 11 years old, found her face down on her bed and bleeding. The older boy, Sean, now he's 11 years old, so think about when you was 11. My daughter's 11. If she says she's seen this, that means she's seen, whatever she said she's seen it. In other words, Jesus Christ, I can't get nothing out of my mouth today. So keep that in mind. This boy is 11 years old. The older boy, Sean, had seen the assailant and described him as a masked male figure in a green army jacket and black shoes. Very descriptive, right? He also said the man had a long, reddish-colored ponytail. Bembenek had dyed blonde hair, weighed 140 pounds. Okay, so this 11-year-old boy said the guy that shot his mom, which was her new husband's ex-wife, was 6 foot something, wearing a green army jacket, had a red ponytail. At the time of her murder, Christine and Fred Schultz had been divorced for 6 months. Fred Schultz initially stated he was on duty investigating a burglary with his partner, Michael Dufree, at the time of her murder, but years later, he admitted that they were actually drinking at a local bar. Imagine that. When ballistics testing allegedly revealed it was his off-duty revolver that had been the murder weapon, suspicion shifted to Laurie Bembenek. as she had been alone in the apartment she shared with Schultz and had access to both the gun and a key to Christine's house that Fred Schultz had secretly copied from his oldest son's house key. So he's divorced from this woman. The oldest son has a house key to his mom's house, I guess, just in case. The daddy takes the key, makes a secret copy of it. Okay. And supposedly he's on duty. His ex-wife was shot with his off-duty revolver. Okay, so it keeps, trust me, it gets better. All right. Fred Schultz had previously been exonerated in the fatal shooting of a Glendale, Wisconsin police officer on July 23rd, 1975. The Glendale officer, George Robert Sasson, had arrested a subject in a bar while off duty. Milwaukee police officers, including Schultz, responded to the call in a suburban Glendale outside their jurisdiction, reportedly mistook Sasson for a suspect and shot him to death when he turned toward them, holding a gun. Schultz and his partner were cleared by the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office in the shooting. Imagine that. This guy, okay, keep listening to this. First of all, everybody remember the name George Robert Sasson. We need to find out what he knew, because this wasn't no accident, in my opinion. This dude was knocked off. Fred Schultz goes out of his jurisdiction, reportedly mistook Sasson for a suspect and shot him to death. Okay? And then the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office said there was no wrongdoing. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Trust me, I'm not even close to being done. Bembenek's trial generated tremendous publicity, and the newspaper began referring to her as Bambi, a nickname she disliked. The prosecution portrayed her as a loose woman addicted to expensive living who wanted Christine Schultz dead so that her new husband would no longer have to pay alimony. The prosecution pointed out that Bembenek also had financial problems. The prosecution claimed that Bembenek was the only person with the motive, the means, opportunity to carry out the crime. The strongest evidence was 2 human hairs found at the crime scene, which matched the ones, they forgot the in the paragraph, which matched the ones taken from the hairbrush of the defendant. The gun used to kill Christine Schultz was allegedly Bembenek's husband's off-duty revolver. The prosecution claimed that Bembenek was the only person besides Fred Schultz to have access to this weapon. Blood was found on the gun. Bembenek supposedly also had access to the key to Christine Schultz's home. There were no signs of break-in, no valuables taken. Schultz's eldest son, however, stated that Bembenek was not the person who held up his house and shot his mother. So the 11-year-old son is still saying, she did not kill my mother. He very specifically described the assailant, how tall he was, what he was wearing, even the color of his hair. Witnesses testified that Bembenek had spoken often of killing Christine Schultz. How many people, I would imagine, have made comments of wanting to kill their spouse's ex? Okay. Me and my wife's been married 12 years. I guarantee you I've mentioned it a couple of times. Not that I would act on anything like that, but that to me don't prove anything. So she's spoken often of killing her, whatever. The prosecution produced a witness who said Bembenek offered to pay him to carry out. Okay, the prosecution produced a witness who said Bembenek offered to pay him to carry out the murder. That to me doesn't prove anything, especially in Milwaukee, Manitowoc, Fond du Lac, all these areas up in there, Calumet, with all the crap they got going on, with all the stuff that's found in these pictures. That don't, you could pay anybody to get up there and say anything, as we've seen in the some other cases. Now, Bembenek owned a green jogging jumpsuit similar to the one described by Schultz's son. It was pointed out that Bembenek owned clothes line and a blue bandana similar to what was used to bind and gag the victim. If Fred Schultz had hired a hitman to take out his ex-wife, he could have easily handed gave him Bembenek's clothing items, to make it look like she did it. or somebody else for that matter. A wig found in the plumbing system of Bembenek's apartment matched fibers found at the murder crime scene. A boutique employee testified that Bembenek purchased such a wig shortly before the murder. Little suspicious, but to me, there's too much other things going on here. On June 28, 1983, Bembenek filed for divorce from Fred. In an interview she gave to Milwaukee Sentinel, Bembenek said that Schultz had written her a letter informing her that he was living with a 19-year-old woman in Florida and had decided to end their marriage. Their divorce was granted in June 1984. While Schultz had initially stood by Bembenek and believed she was innocent, he later changed his mind, publicly stated that he believed she was guilty of sin. Bembenek also came to believe that Fred Schultz was guilty of hiring someone to murder Christine and allowed her to take the fall. She contended that the attorney whom Fred Schultz had hired to represent her had a conflict of interest and purposely failed to inform the jury that there was evidence that Schultz was connected to the murder. After her imprisonment, Bembenek filed 3 unsuccessful appeals for her conviction. Blah, 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 blah. Federal investigation, police corruption. Bembenek supporters suggest that Fred Schultz may have arranged to have someone else murder his ex-wife. One possible candidate was Frederick Hornberger, a career criminal who briefly worked with Schultz on a remodeling project and was a former boyfriend of Judy Zest. I mentioned in a video the other day about in the Stephen Avery case, I said the police know a bunch of criminals. They know a bunch of people. For instance, if they know somebody that is capable of committing murder, a criminal, they can go to them and say, look, this is what I got on you. This is how much time you're looking at. If you don't want to go to prison for this amount of time, this is what you're going to do. And, you know, they'll follow specifically. They don't care. They might even pay them money too. Say, look, I'm going to give you this money. You're not going to go to jail. This is what you're going to do, point blank. I mean, the cops have a lot of power. And if you read this, I know I'm having to read it fast, but if you go through and read this, you start researching it. Some of you might even know all about this. The husband is very suspicious. And the oldest son saying that he's seen a red ponytail and it was definitely a male that killed his mom. I don't care about all this other evidence that the state is saying, well, she went and bought this wig and she did this. The son has no reason to take up for the new woman in his dad's life. He's straight up saying the description of the person that shot his mom. So, according to the number of affidavits which emerged following Bembenek's conviction, Hornberger boasted of killing Christine Schultz, to other inmates while he was in jail. Yet publicly, obviously, when he's in public, he vehemently denied any involvement in Schultz's murder up until his suicide in 1991, following a robbery and a hostage-taking standoff in which he had been involved. Every one of these cases, like me and Thomas talked about in the first episode of Mysteries of Manitowoc, in the Ricky case, there's 2 homicides. Two suicides. In this case, there's suicide. I mean, every time something suspicious is going on, people are killing themselves. I don't think that's the case. I don't think these people are killing themselves. And you would think that, you know, you might think, well, come on now, you can't really believe that these, you know, this fraternity, this brotherhood of all, you know, these cops and attorneys and all this stuff would really kill somebody. Why not? They're involved in all kind of crap. They're not going to let somebody like Stephen Avery bring them down. They're not going to let this woman who has evidence of all these, you know, they're using cocaine and they're dancing nude in front of these kids and all these people, and they're doing all kind of other stuff after the party's over with. And she has all these photos and evidence. They're not going to, they got a lot of important people in that crowd. You think they was going to, you know, let her bring them down? Not to mention, I left out of this, when she went to the Equal Opportunity Commission, she actually had a lawsuit against, I might have mentioned it, the Milwaukee Police Department. And then later on, when she was trying to get her pardon, she took out a $63 million lawsuit against the police department. So don't think for 1 second that these people won't be motivated to shut her up and to frame her. So it goes on to talk about Dr. Elaine Samuels, the medical examiner who conducted the autopsy, had originally concluded that the hairs recovered from the body were consistent with that of the victim. After Dr. Samuels had come to the conclusion that the hair evidence was examined by Diane Hansen, a hair analyst from a crime lab in Madison, Wisconsin. Hansen stated that the two of the hairs were consistent with samples taken from Laurie Bembenek's hairbrush. Dr. Samuels refuted that claim, stating in 1983, quoted in the Toronto Star in 1991, that I recovered no blonde or red hairs of any length or textures. All of the hairs I recovered from the body were brown and were glossy, identical to the hair of the victim. So they were sitting there claiming that they got these hairs that proved she was at the scene. That was a lie. This guy come out and said, no, all I had was the victim's hair. I do not like to suggest that evidence was altered. Now listen to this. All right, the guy that, did the autopsy, right? He said, I recovered no blonde or red hairs of any length or texture. All of the hairs I recovered from the body were brown and glossy, identical to the hair of the victim. Okay, so identical to the ex-wife. Then he goes on to say, I do not like to suggest that evidence was altered in any way, but I can find no logical explanation for what amounted to the appearance of blonde hair in an envelope that contained no such hair at the time it was sealed by me. So this guy is basically saying this crap was, it's planted. It's fabricating evidence. What the hell is going on in Wisconsin? That's what I want to know. I know this happens all over the world. And trust me, I used to live with two cops. I live with my cousin. I live with cops. And you got a lot of good cops out there. But I know a lot of cops too, like friends of friends that tell me these stories and about all these different things that cops do. And, the story I mentioned in the first episode of Manitowoc, we had a SWAT officer, the leader of the SWAT team down here, was kind of messing with all these kids, and he got arrested, and like child sex rings stuff. This stuff happens, right? So far, everything I read, this woman was framed for murder. Till the day she died, she fought to try to get a pardon from this because she maintained her innocence every step of the way. So the apartment where Bembenek and Fred Schultz lived shared drainage with another apartment. In the shared drain pipe was found a brownish red wig, which matched some of the hairs found on the victim's body. The woman who occupied the other apartment testified that Judy Hess had knocked on her door and asked to use her bathroom. You can't, if you wanted to write a book about something like this and it was pure fiction, you wouldn't be able to write it as good as what I'm reading to you right now. The apartment where Bembenek and Fred Schultz lived shared drainage with another apartment. In the shared drain pipe, it was found a brownish red wig, which matched some of the hairs found on the victim's body. The woman who occupied the other apartment testified that Judy Hess had knocked on her door and asked to use her bathroom. After Zess used the woman's bathroom, the plumbing was clogged. Zess had also admitted to owning a brownish red wig. They framed this woman. I'm telling you, if this, what I'm reading, has any validity, and I think that it does, because it's a pretty good source. I'll tell y'all the website in a minute. There's tons of information on this online from like actual news agencies. This isn't hearsay. This is crazy. This is right down the road. I don't know how far Milwaukee is from Manitowoc, but I know a lot of the people that was in those photos dancing nude and all this are the same players. This is all one big group of lawyers, law enforcement officers, etc. While in prison, Bembenek earned a bachelor's degree from University of Wisconsin Parkside and helped found a prisoner's newspaper. She also met and became engaged to a factory worker, Dominique Galetti, who was a brother of Bembenek's cellmate. Now, trying to hit on the important points because there's tons of crap in here. I'm just trying to see what some of y'all are saying. Okay. Bembenek wrote a book about her experience. All right. She wrote a book about her experience titled Woman on Trial. After her release, she had various legal and personal problems. She was arrested again on marijuana possession charges and filed for bankruptcy. So she liked to smoke weed. Okay, she's guilty of smoking weed. That means nothing, and when it comes down to murder. So she also admitted to being an alcoholic. All right, so she had a drug problem. That don't mean that she went and killed anybody. In 1996, she moved to Washington State to be near her retired parents in Vancouver. Then she met a local resident, U.S. Forest Service employee Marty Carson, whom she eventually married. She eventually was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, complicated by a growing addiction to alcohol. As a form of therapy, Carson encouraged her to devote time and passion to painting. She had made paintings since childhood. Her early work had been the subject of an exhibition at UW Milwaukee in 1992. Like I found this. I mean, this case just keeps getting stranger and stranger. In 2002, Bembenek either fell or jumped from a second-story window, breaking her leg so badly that it had to be amputated below the knee. Bembenek claimed that she had been confined in an apartment by handlers for the Dr. Phil television show and was injured while attempting to escape. So she did have some post-traumatic stress disorder. I probably would too after all this crap happened to me. The question is, in this, and like I said, I got more information to dig into this on, and there's tons of more information. But the question would be, why would they frame her for murder? Okay. Well, here's the deal. This is some other information that I read. The man she was married to, Fred Schultz, was supposedly the one that was taking those pictures of all of these officers, all these people in the crowd at this party. And there's marijuana, there's cocaine, there's all sorts of crap. Okay. When she discovers these photos, I'm assuming because once she moves in with Fred Schultz, she discovers these photos and she's like, wait a second. And she probably discovered more than the photos, to be honest with you. Fred probably had dirt on everybody. Okay. He probably was mixed in a lot of stuff, and she probably learned a lot of stuff by being married to him. So she gets some information. Apparently information that some people cannot afford. There's even speculation that Ken Kratz was at these nude parties. So, I mean, there's high profile people in there. So she gets hold of some information, and somebody cannot let this information get out. So, and she's fired over this little marijuana incident. And then she sees all of this, all of these things that these other male police officers are doing, and they don't get fired for. So naturally, she's like, well, this isn't going to go down this way. So she starts to rock the boat. And when you rock the boat in Wisconsin, you get dealt with. You get killed. You get put in prison. You get framed. And we're seeing this time and time again. This isn't some, fantasy that we sit here and talk about. To me, regardless if any of the same players framed this woman that's involved with the Avery case, I don't know, but we're seeing a trend in when you rock the boat, you're going to get dealt with. And that's all it is to it. So what information did she come across? Because me personally, I don't think it was just the photos. judging by the amount of people at that, I don't even know what you call it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know back in the 80s, 70s, y'all did some things. Some of y'all older people, y'all, the hippies, y'all did all kind of crap, Woodstock. I don't even know what half of this crap is. But I know, being 32 years old and growing up in the South, I have never just been driving down the road and seen this nude party going on with all of these people standing around. They even had kids there watching this crap. You got nude men up there holding their junk. You got women taking their clothes. I mean, I don't even know what's going on. So the whole thing to me is strange. But to me, I don't think that's what got her framed. That don't seem severe enough. Now, it would have made all these cops and police departments look bad. They're out there snorting cocaine, doing marijuana, and having sex, probably groupies, orgies, all kind of stuff. But I don't think that's what got her framed. I think she came across something else. Okay. And Fred was involved in framing her. Absolutely. Judy Zess and, you know, I think all of them involved, but this does have unique connections because supposedly Bushman, some people have even said that Kratz and Debbie, the coroner, there's a bunch of people supposedly that's in these photos. Now, I don't know. I can't, it's hard for me to look at a person 30-year difference and tell if that's the same person. But the people that's coming out with these photos, a lot of them are saying they know the people in there. So, you know, it's very damaging information. But one thing that a bunch of things that stood out to me, but one thing in particular is, I'm sure some of y'all have kids. Maybe y'all have kids around 11. 11-year-old kid, if they describe a person to you, they're going to be fairly accurate. Now, if the kid was 5 years old, maybe we're not sitting here talking about this. But an 11-year-old kid knows what a person looks like. So if he says it was a male, then it was a male. He's, you know, most time if people don't really realize what they witnessed, they won't have a lot of specific details. They'll say, well, you know, this or that, whatever. But this guy said, the 11-year-old boy said it was a male. He was 6 foot something, red ponytail, green army jacket, black shoes. I mean, that's very specific. So this woman did not kill her husband's ex-wife. This woman came across some information. I don't know if it was just the photos, but this woman came across some information and it landed her in prison with a murder charge. They killed 2 birds with 1 stone. They got rid of his ex-wife and they put his new wife in prison. That was probably a mercy thing, you know, like, well, they just framed her for murder because maybe they didn't want to kill her or whatever. But going back to this guy, George Sasson, okay, I'm going to have to get with some researchers because I just simply don't have the time. And I'm going to try to research. But this case, I can't find it, but I'll remember enough about it. George, I want to say Robert Sasson. Okay. Fred Schultz was responding out of his jurisdiction to some kind of hostage situation where George Sasson was off duty and he was trying to arrest a suspect. And when he turned around, Fred shot him supposedly because, you know, he didn't know, he wasn't in uniform, so he didn't know that this guy was a police officer. Given all of this other information, to me, that's 100% false. We need to find out. Some of you in the audience might be really good researchers. We need to find out everything we can about George Sasson. Because I'm telling you right now, this Fred Schultz guy, he framed his wife. He had a hitman kill his ex-wife. And when he was exonerated, he was in big trouble for shooting this off-duty cop. And then he was exonerated. They basically, like they always do, said no wrongdoing, which really all stems back to, I don't know if the Attorney General was in office at that time. I'd have to check, but Peggy or whatever her name was, they always find no wrongdoing when it comes to the officers. But George Sasson knew something as well. Okay. Bembenek's daddy worked for the Milwaukee Police Department and quit because he said they were all corrupt. She said they were all corrupt. She found information that somebody did not want her to have. And one thing that was striking to me was when Fred went to Florida, he was with a 19-year-old girl. Now, we're talking about a man that's probably late 40s, and he's with a 19-year-old girl. Now, I don't want to speculate too much, but a lot of rumors have gone around about sex trafficking. I know when I looked up some stats not long ago, I wanted to see where are the, worst sex trafficking, human trafficking states in the United States. Now, Wisconsin specifically they didn't rank that bad in these categories. But what shocked me beyond belief was the neighbor to Wisconsin, Michigan, right across the pond, is number 2 in almost every category. Human trafficking, drugs, violent crimes, child abuse. They're like second and third on the list in almost every one of those categories. The states right below Wisconsin, Indiana, they're high on the list. Illinois, they're high on the list. So in a sense, Wisconsin is at the epicenter of human trafficking. Now, the numbers don't show it flowing into Wisconsin, but who knows what these police officers, and I'm not saying all of them, I'm sure you have a lot of really good police officers, but who knows what a certain group, a certain fraternity within this government has going on. It's not too far-fetched when you think about it that, they have sick people in the world. And when you give people power, when you give, district attorneys and sheriffs and attorney general, when you give these people power, some people are not meant to have power. It goes to their head. They think that they can do whatever the heck they want to do. All it takes to corrupt a man, and this is not a quote from anybody, I've just come up with this in my head. Really, all it takes to corrupt a man or a woman is to purposely put them in a compromised situation, or maybe they've already been in a compromised situation where you have so much leverage on that person, you can make them do whatever you want. You can get people to do what you want and manipulate them into doing what you want. We have to start the people. If there's anybody listening to me right now that thinks I'm absolutely crazy, you have not listened to a word that I just read. It's right here in this article. This is not a fairy tale. All you have to do is have an open mind and really listen. So I want to continue on with a little bit of this, and then we'll discuss some more about it. Bembenek continued to insist she was innocent, but the Wisconsin Supreme Court refused to overturn her no contest plea, saying such a plea cannot be withdrawn. They typically don't overturn murder convictions like that unless you have just so overwhelming evidence. So in 2008, Bembenek filed a petition with the United States Supreme Court seeking a reversal of the second murder conviction, second-degree murder conviction. Bembenek's attorney pointed to the evidence not heard in the original trial, including ballistic tests matching the murdered bullet to the gun owned by Fred Schultz and the male DNA found on the victim. They believed that the ex-wife was sexually assaulted. There was male DNA found on the victim. So this woman was framed. In the male DNA found on the victim. Evidence the victim had been sexually assaulted, and the eyewitness testimony of the two young sons who said that they had seen a heavy-set, masked man. Bembenek's petition argued the court needed to clarify whether the defendants who plead guilty or no contest have an opportunity to review evidence comparable to the rights of those who plead not guilty. Her appeal was denied. Of course it was. Her case was the inspiration for 2 television movies, various books and articles portraying her as a victim of a miscarriage of justice. In 2004, MSNBC produced and aired a biography of Laurie Bembenek on their Headliners and Legends TV show. Bembenek did not take part in the show. She was interviewed by WTMJ TV anchor Mike Jacobs for a 2-part sweeps interview that aired on the station's 10 p.m. newscast on October 28 and October 29, 2010. On November the 20th, 2010, a month later after that interview, she died at a hospice facility in Oregon from liver and kidney failure. So, I don't know what to think. I mean, there's corruption, there's collusion, there is conspiracy, there are brotherhoods and fraternities that are thicker than blood. Okay. And I don't know. I'm not an expert on really any of this. But when I read something like that, and if you present a case and there's that many inconsistencies or things that's highly suspicious, I mean, this is crap that you see in movies. You know, you watch a movie and about somebody being framed for murder or something, you know, like Shooter with Mark Wahlberg. You know, he gets framed for assassinating the president of Ethiopia or whatever. You think stuff like this only happens in movies. But if you really pay attention to these things, there's crap that happens like this all around us. Government officials, sheriffs particularly, like Thomas Kasurik, I'm going to do a video on him one day. It might take 3 videos for me to describe how much I can't stand Thomas Kasurik. But sheriffs, district attorneys, attorney generals, you know, sheriff's departments in general, they stick together, a lot of which are good people, okay? Not every single police officer is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I don't even want to imply that. But there are factions within these departments that are not going to let people like Stephen Avery and Laurie and, you know, things of that nature, they're not going to let that bring them down. So what have we seen? What are the similarities between these Stephen Avery and this lady? She filed a lawsuit. Stephen filed a lawsuit. You know, Stephen was rocking the boat. He wouldn't go away. She was rocking the boat. She wouldn't go away. Evidence was planted in both cases. Both people were framed for murder. In all honesty, if you look at her case first and then look at Stephen's case becomes so much more believable. I mean, you look at the extent to where these people will go to cover what they're doing. And I honestly believe, I'm going to look into it, but I honestly believe she uncovered more than what was in those photos. And if you haven't seen them, go online. All you got to do is type in Laurie Bembenek and you'll find it. And I wanted to give y'all this this article. I can't even find it now. I'll try to put the link in the description to this article. And let me see. It's a New York Times article, if I'm not mistaken. No. I'll have to find the link and put it in the description. But there's numerous articles about it. All you got to do is Google her name and read it for yourself. But I mean, every time we talk about a case, the Ricky case, the Laurie case, there's key people committing suicides. There's key players, some of which are all the same people. You know, if you live in a county, let's say, I don't know the area real well. I've never been to Wisconsin. I'd love to go, but you got, to my understanding, you got Milwaukee, you got Fond du Lac, you got Green Bay, Manitowoc. They're all right there. Calumet, they're all right there together. Okay. All these officers know each other. Okay. When I used to live with my cousins, her husband was a police officer, and they had a roommate that was a police officer. They knew people from the surrounding counties. All those officers they knew, they associated with, they hung out with. Cops know other cops in counties. They cooperate with each other on investigations. They know each other. They see each other in public. They have barbecues together. Don't think for a second that because this was in Milwaukee that this has nothing to do with the players that's involved in Stephen Avery's case. All of these things are, if they're not connected directly, the people involved are connected in these cases. I mean, the corruption is running rampant. I don't know about it anymore. I don't know who's in charge, if anything's gotten any better. But the corruption in these cases are outstanding. I'm not saying this don't happen in the South. I know it does. Like I just pointed some examples out to y'all earlier. But some of these things, like I've never, maybe I'm just too young, but I've never heard of some of this crap. You know, like this nude party. What is that even about? If any of y'all are like 50 or 60 years old that's watching this, what's the deal? What was going on back then that everybody just wanted to go out there and take their clothes off and strut around in front of kids? And I mean, I don't understand what was going on, really. I don't see what the point was. I can understand everybody getting together, drinking, having fun, partying, whatever. But what's the deal with the clothes coming off? I mean, that's the part that throws me. What gets me is there's so many people watching. It's like it's majority men taking their clothes off. I don't understand what the appeal was to draw such a crowd. You know, a lot of the crowd was men. And then you have they had kids in the crowd. So you got kids in the crowd. And the suspected guy that's Bushman, he's up there holding it. You know, the same thing that Sandra Morse accused Stephen Avery of doing. They're up there doing it. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. The coincidences are numerous in all of this. So I just wanted to make a video about that. Trust me, there'll be more videos on that, this case. And Thomas, as soon as I get him back on, we're going to do episode 2. I don't know if we're going to pick back up on the Ricky Hochstetler case or if we'll move on to another one. We still have tons of video to do on the Ricky case. It's just, I don't know if we're going to do them in succession or we're going to skip them around or what. But I would love to know what you guys think about this case. If you have heard of this case, if you have a lot of knowledge about this case, or if this is the first time you've heard about it, you can let me know. But it was a wannabe Woodstock. I guess I know this is going to sound kind of crazy. I think Woodstock was like this week-long concert or something, but what the heck is Woodstock? If y'all could explain that to me real quick. It's Milwaukee, Mary, lots of drugs there. I'm waiting on a comment. I want somebody to explain to me what Woodstock was. To my understanding, it's a bunch of hippies at Woodstock on drugs and nude and all kind of crap. And that's what I referred to earlier. Maybe this was just the thing back then. I really don't get it. But so regardless, Laurie Bembenek had information, damaging information. She had access to the photos once she married Fred Schultz. But I don't believe the photos is what got her framed. And George Sasson, and I'm going to look into this. I got just a person to find out information on George Sasson, but George Sasson was not accidentally killed. I'm telling you right now, Fred Schultz was exonerated for murdering him, but I'm telling you, he was not. That wasn't a mistake. George knew something as well. George and Laurie were killed purposely, and then the prisoner that boasted about killing Christine winds up killing himself. So, I mean, it's all laid out for you. All you got to do is research it. Hopefully, I covered enough of this in this video. So, Carl Mann says it's a big love festival in the 60s. Oh, I thought it was 70s. In the 60s of the first festival, one of the first festivals, probably. They take drugs, listen to shit music, and it's called a festival. Well, if they was on drugs, they probably thought the music was awesome, you know. But I appreciate everybody tuning in. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe, like the video. If you have any other questions or comments, make sure to leave them in the comment section. And I appreciate everybody tuning in. And y'all have a good evening. And stay out of Milwaukee and stay out of Manitowoc if you don't want to wind up in prison. That's all I got to say.